Hello everyone, and welcome to my first making of video, also known as Let's Look at Arl's forehead while he works. In this video, I'll be covering Charlotte, one of my newest additions to my Dragon team. Do not expect a super professional video. I'm making this video for fun and to show my workflow. I'm open to suggestions if anyone wants to help me improve. So please, leave a comment because I love reading and answering them. I use ZBrush to model and paint the character. My main brushes are clay buildup for most of the model, orb cracks or damp standard for crevices or other details, and then I use inflate or move for other areas. Something that I want to add, do not be afraid to reuse assets from other models to save yourself some time. For Charlotte, I reused the horns from another character that I made. Lucky for me, Charlotte has the same type of horns, so I didn't have to model new ones. When making models in ZBrush, I always use references. In this case, I only had a couple of drawings fully painted of Charlotte and a lot of sketches. So I had a pretty clear idea on how I wanted her to be, and I didn't need that many references on screen. I also used Shu's hands. Shu is the first dragon that I modeled, and I didn't feel like making new hands, so I reused her hands, her eyebrows, and her wings. I prefer having the character's mouth closed and then make the inside in Blender together with the teeth and tongue. This way, I have it easier when rigging the jawbone since the mouth is already closed. I reshaped Shu's wings to fit Charlotte's. Since she has shorter wings, I had to cut some parts off. And then I made the mistake of reshaping the membrane, which I will end up changing later when I painted them. Once the high poly model is finished, I hand paint all of it, starting with the most predominant color and then add layers on top of it. When painting the eyes, I took Shu's eyes as reference, but way later in the video I end up making new eyes that will be better for animation. While painting the scales, I had symmetry activated, and it was a huge mistake, because it made the character way too symmetrical, so I broke the symmetry by adding cuts on the horns, some scars on the chest, and repainting the scales on both sides of the body. Once the painting is complete, I export every part and move on to retopologize the model. Retopology is the process of converting high-resolution models into something way smaller that can be used for animation or video games. For example, the entirety of Charlotte in ZBrush had 1 million polygons, and now I lower it to something that won't reach 15,000 with all the pieces combined. Retopology is one of these things that nobody enjoys doing, but it must be done, and if you enjoy retopologizing, I invite you to contact me and do it for me. To retopologize, I use Topogun. In this case, I'm using Topogun 3 Beta. It brought to the table some tools that helped me make the process a bit faster, but I ended up relying too much on them and ended up taking longer to make certain parts like the tail, which I realized was way easier to do with another tool. I tried to retopologize the face after I've done most of the body, since it's one of the most difficult parts to do. I need to be careful with the loops I add to the face, since it's one of the most important parts for a 3D animation model. I am not the best at retopology. I get better at it with each model I make, but I am human and make mistakes as well, but I try to minimize them as much as possible. In Blender, I had to cut the model in half to mirror it, because I had some issues making it symmetrical in Topogun. Also, it will help later animating the face if it's symmetrical. The horns were easy to do once I stopped using the patch tool and used the tubes tool instead to make it faster. I only need to make one horn and then mirror it in Blender. The rest of the parts were quite easy, and once I have all of them together in Blender, I start a process called UV unwrapping, which is basically peeling the model to then add the textures on top of it. Here's a visual representation to those who still don't get it. And if you still don't understand, don't worry too much about it, but it's still a better process to do than retopology. Anything at this point is better than retopology. Once I have all the UVs organized, I export the UV unwrapped models individually to begin the baking process. Baking sadly has nothing to do with cake or pastries. It's a process in which all the information related to a 3D model becomes a texture that can be used on our retopologized model. I do it all in Topogun, and the process is always the same. I take the ZBrush model with all the information, then the retopologized model with the UV mapping, and I tell the program to extract certain texture maps. I export the normal map, which adds surface information to the model, ambient occlusion, which adds ambient shadows to the model, it's like fake shadows, and then the color, which speaks for itself. I choose to only export these 3 textures because that's all I really need for my characters. What I do next is take all the textures into Photoshop and cut whatever parts I don't need, to make just one single file for each texture, instead of having multiple files for each part of the body. I also make some adjustments to the textures because they will always have certain problems between the fingers or small areas, which are easy to fix using Photoshop. Once the model is fully textured in Blender, I start working on the mouth, separating the mouth and slowly building the inside however I want it. Then I proceed to add a new material for the inside of the mouth and paint it with a solid color. For the mouth, I begin creating the gums and the teeth, followed then by the tongue. They are all very basic shapes with solid colors. I decided to make the inside of the mouth a bit longer and add a hole to represent the throat, which makes it look a bit better. Before I begin adding bones to the model, I decide to start adding shape keys for the face rigging. A shape key can be used for many things. In my case, I use it to move certain parts of the face, for example to close the eyes, make her look angry, or raise the eyebrows. Once I have them all done, I will add bones that will control those shape keys. This is a process that I tried before, but I couldn't find a way to make it work. This time though, I learned how to properly control the face with shape keys, and it gives better results. It is a slow process because I have to check if combining 1 or 2 more shape keys will give a good result. I also added a shape key to make the spikes on her tail become longer and sharper, which is a trait I added to Charlotte. Rigging is a process in which I add bones to the model, and those bones will control how the body moves, and I will use them for animation. I always did it all from scratch. Then I tried using Rigify, which is an add-on that makes this process a bit more easy, but when it came to the face, I had to manually add all the bones since my characters are not human. This time, I made the rig a bit more simple, and I'll be adding new elements to it as I see fit. I like adding support bones in certain areas like the nose or the hips. These bones won't be used for animation, so I hide them afterwards, but it will help me a lot later when I have to correct the wake painting. This is my first time rigging the face of a character combining bones with shape keys, so if anyone sees any problem with the way I work, I would love to hear you out so I can improve. This is how I did it. I added bones to certain locations and then I added a constraint to limit the X, Y and Z location. I linked the shape keys to these locations, so if I move the bone down, it will do the blinking action, making her angry when I move it to the left or sad when I move it to the right. I did this for all the shape keys, which took a while because it's not a fast process, and after finishing one side of the face, I had to do it to the other side too. Sadly, for the mouth, I couldn't mirror the shape keys as I had expected. My guess is that the lips' vertices were too close to each other and it wouldn't understand the symmetry, so I had to manually add the shape keys without mirroring them, and then link them to each bone. If you have made it this far, I wanted to thank you so much for watching the video. And if you want to follow more of my work or watch my streams, I will leave a bunch of links in the description. If you could leave a like, a comment if you want, it can be anything, you can just quack if you want, and subscribe to the channel, it would make my day. I want to promote more my channel and I cannot do it without your help, so any little bit of help is appreciated. Thank you so much. A little bit of trivia. Did you know I'm planning a big animation? It will combine my characters, Puddles the duck, and my 3 dragons, Shu, Charlotte, and Snap. Right now, all I have is an unfinished storyboard. It will be a difficult project, but I'm going all in. I hope to have something to show someday. And now back to the video. Once I finished all the facial rigging, I changed the bones' shapes to something more visually appealing, like circles for the spine or different shapes for the eyes, instead of having these square boxes for bones. And in this next part, you can see that I already changed Charlotte's eyes. These eyes have controllers to change the size and shape of the pupil, and also the little white circles representing eye shines. I did this because the painted eyes I had didn't give me the freedom to make different eye poses. I had to change the eye textures between blinks to hide it. But now I can have more freedom to change them and animate the eyes without an issue. It's my first try, so if I can find better ways to model them or animate them, I won't mind changing them again. Back to the bone shapes, I usually give most of the bones the shape of circles, since they are fast and circles are always good. I give the elbows and the knees diamond shapes, and the jaw something that probably looks like a jaw. Next, I want to pose the character and give it some electricity sparks. I imported a procedural electricity effect from another content creator called Simon N, and you will find a link in the description to his tutorial on how to make such effect. I added the particle effects to the body, hands and tail to have them ready for animation later, and test how it looks if I change the size or shape of the object. I tried rendering this image in cycles, but for only one frame it already took me so long that I gave up on it. I think it's all because of the eyes' reflection or refraction, but if I remove it, it will not look as good. Even with my GPU RTX 3060, it just takes forever. So I end up using Eevee for the render, which literally takes me 4 seconds and it gives me a really good result. And to finally declare the character finished, I do 3D animation. The first clip shows 2 things. 1, I haven't animated in a very long time, and 2, I cannot animate while hanging out in a voice call with multiple people. Between the feeling of being watched and being constantly distracted, I did extremely poorly. Which is strange, because when it comes to all the other steps I did, most of them were done on stream, but when it comes to animation, I lose the few brain cells I have. I basically tried to animate straightforward with a video I recorded of myself to have a reference. When it comes to animation, one cannot be shy to record themselves doing silly stuff. Sometimes I can find references online, but if I need something specific, and as long as I don't have to do a triple backwards flip, then I can record myself doing certain actions. The next day, I try animating again, this time by myself, and using my trusty animator survival kit for certain pose references. And finally things started looking more clear. Animating is a job that takes a lot of time. There's always something to change and make better. Animation is never perfect, and there's always room for improvement. I start by doing certain poses, then some in-betweens, and adding extra movement at certain points, so the arms don't clip inside of each other. For example, I have to replay the animation countless times to check on the timing and adjust it to what I want. If something doesn't work, I redo it and try to simplify it. Also, most of the time, I tend to improvise and add more to an animation. For example, having Charlotte placing her hands on her hips was not planned. but it enriched the animation even more. When I animate, if there's anything that will have some sort of overlapping, like the tail or the wings when she moves, I prefer leaving it for last. And once the animation is finished, I start adding the thunder effects. I add particles to the palms first, since that will be where the sparks appear first, and then engulf the entire body with them. I added lights in front of her hand and 2 more surrounding the body, since the particles won't light up the character too much. I also added green lights for her eyes. I don't know why I like making their eyes shine when they get serious or battle ready, but I thought it looked cool and I'm keeping it. I add thunder to her hands and background with a tool that I got from Joey Carlino, and I will add a link in the description if anyone is interested in it. I had some issues with the lighting and had to stop the render to change it until I was happy with it. Lighting is not my forte, and I want to get better at it since they enrich the animation so much, so I try until I'm happy with the results and render the animation. Thank you so much everyone for watching this video. So what did you think? Since it's my first video in this style, any kind of feedback will help me a lot, so please don't forget to comment. Give a like if you liked the video, or a dislike if you disliked it. And if you're not subscribed to the channel, I welcome you to be part of the Duck Pond. I'll see you in my next video.